Now, it appears even more trouble is on the horizon for the Tories. The results from a YouGov survey forecast the Tories will retain just 169 seats in the next election, the biggest drop in MPs in over 100 years. This would give Keir Starmer a 120-seat majority, making for an electoral wipeout on the scale of John Major's infamous 1997 defeat. And I'm old enough to remember it. Can the Tories turn it round? Let's ask political scientist Sir John Curtice. Sir John, welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. An auspicious moment for you to set the ball rolling, really, on this electoral year that we're about to enter. And it don't look great if you're Rishi Sunak, does it?
No, it doesn't. But the honest truth is it hasn't looked great for Rishi Sunak for quite a while.
Yeah.
The fundamental problem facing the Prime Minister is that at around 25% on average in the most recent polls, 26% in today's poll from YouGov that's got so much publicity, support for the Conservatives is little different from what it was in the immediate wake of the resignation of Liz Truss. And the hope of Tory MPs that Mr. Sunak will be able to reverse the damage that was inflicted on the Conservative Party, first of all by Boris Johnson and Partygate, and secondly by Liz Truss and her fiscal event, that hope has largely not been fulfilled. Insofar as progress was being made last year, a lot of it seemed to be thrown away when the Conservative Party failed to fall behind the Privileges Committee report of the House of Commons that judged that Boris Johnson had misled the House of Commons. Support for the Conservative Party fell back at that point, and the truth is they've been bouncing it around the 25% mark pretty much ever since.
Yeah. And there's a lot of comparisons being made to 1997 and John Major's loss to Tony Blair. Is there something similar about just the fact that back in 97 people were fed up, they'd had enough of the Tories, they'd had enough of John Major and his kind of back to basics campaigns and all the other things that went horribly wrong, and they just wanted somebody different? And it seems a bit like that now, doesn't it?
Oh, sure. I think undoubtedly this has been a parliament in which the Conservatives have succeeded in losing support, rather than necessarily a parliament in which Labour have gained the enthusiasm of the electorate. But, two obvious parallels between now and the 92 to 97 parliament. The first is that, of course, the Conservatives' prospects were damaged in the end permanently by Black Wednesday in September 1992, when the financial markets turned on the pound, which was at that stage still pegged to the European exchange rate mechanism. And equally, the financial markets turned against the government in the wake of Liz Truss's fiscal event, when the markets were concerned about seemingly unfunded tax cuts. And the truth is that governments that preside over financial difficulty in the markets struggle to survive at the ballot box, even if, as was true between 92 and 97, but it's not true now, the economy was doing quite well. The second obvious parallel is that the Conservative Party proved to be continually divided during the course of the 92 to 97 Parliament. The Conservative Party is clearly very heavily divided now. It's between those who think that the party has grown the state too much, it's too much taxation, too much spending, versus those who think, no, we have to accept the the pandemic, and equally divided between those who think that culture wars issues are important, including immigration, and those who again take a more centrist view. So the party is deeply internally divided. It has a difficult economic backdrop, and all of that is terribly, terribly redolent of the 92 to 97 Parliament.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem as if they can get agreement on anything, really. We've got the Rwanda vote tomorrow. I can't work out exactly how many different factions there are, but there's at least 4 or 5 of them who all want something different, none of which can actually be satisfied. And you've even got Lee Anderson, the deputy chairman of the party, saying he's going to vote with the rebels.
Well, the truth is that the government's decision in December to try to bear down on the issue of immigration has proven to be no more successful than all of the other various initiatives that the government engaged in, starting with trying to loosen somewhat policy on net zero, with putting back the date on phasing out of gas boilers and petrol and diesel cars back in September. And we had a whole litany of various initiatives thereafter. None of them succeeded in moving the polls. Indeed, potentially the problem with the immigration issue, apart from the fact that, as you said, it's opened up a division within the parliamentary party itself, is that so far, although yes, it's an issue that concerned voters, although lots of people who voted Conservative in 2019 said they felt that immigration was too high, both legal and illegal, it wasn't clear that this was a particularly important factor in explaining the willingness or otherwise of 2019 Conservative voters to vote for the party again. Some sign, however, that in the wake of the government's decision to focus on immigration, it has become something of a losing issue for the party. In other words, by focusing on immigration and focusing on a subject where, frankly, the government is struggling to make any substantive progress, it may have done no more than remind voters of something they're not very happy about, rather than impressing them with evidence that perhaps the government is finally trying to get the numbers down.
Yeah, well, I think if they'd managed to be successful at some kind of immigration control, it might have been a good idea. But since they haven't really done that, it means absolutely nothing. Final question for you, Sir John. What about reform? How do you see them panning out? They've run high in the polls before, but there's a couple of by-elections this week. We've never quite seen them getting at the ballot box the 10 or 11% that they say they want to get.
You're certainly right that reforms so far in the parliamentary by-elections of last year did not really put on the kind of performance we might expect, given their standing in the national opinion polls. That said, that didn't do the Conservatives any good because, of course, in 3 of those by-elections, they suffered over 20% swings to the Labour Party anyway. The evidence certainly, however, is that reform are now eating significantly into the Conservative vote. Indeed, amongst those who voted Conservative in 2019, for every one of them who's now saying they'll vote Labour, there's another one who say they will vote Reform. And that's the one thing that's changed since Liz Truss vacated office. Then the Conservative Party was losing votes clearly, primarily to Labour. Now the losses are a mixture of losses to Labour and to Reform. And to that extent, at least, Reform are to some degree now providing Labour with competition for the votes of disgruntled Conservative voters. But of course, for the most part, those who are going to relieve, as the YouGov poll emphasised, are going to Reform, as the YouGov poll today emphasised, are primarily those who still believe in the Brexit project and voted Leave very strongly in 2016.
Indeed. So, John Curtice, thanks very much indeed for some very interesting insights there into why nobody really wants to vote for the Tory party, do they? I mean, that seems to be their basic problem.